Probably you think it's the same wind that you fly your kite in, and it turns those big modern windmills. Well, according to Heidegger, it's not. Well, let's start by thinking about what a thing is. Now, normally, you think a thing is an object over there. It's a discrete individual that occupies some position in space. That makes sense. But in fact, in our normal action, that's not what things are. When you do something, you don't really notice the things around you. When you do something, you're oriented towards your goal, your objective. And as you carry out your action, the things around you just kind of get absorbed in your action, allowing you to carry out that practice without you even noticing them. Like, so if I'm sitting and drawing a picture, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm working on a table, I'm using a pencil, I don't really notice those things. I notice the drawing. And if I make a mistake with one of the lines, I suddenly reach over and grab the eraser and erase it, and draw a new one. And if I have to move on to a second piece of paper, then I pick the first one up and put it over at a space on the table where there's room for it. Oh, but I need another piece of paper. So I get up and I walk across the floor and get another piece of paper from the shelf and come back and sit down. Right? In that situation, I'm really just wrapped up consistently in that task. And I deal with the couch, the table, the space on the table, the space I have to traverse, the space where the paper is situated, the paper, the pencil, and the eraser. I deal with all those things as things that just sort of show up for me when I need them. I live with those things kind of all at the ready as equipment, as Heidegger calls them. They're not things that I relate to as individual discrete objects in some position in space that I notice. On the contrary, I kind of live out of this whole network of possible powers I could draw on. And I draw on them without even thinking about it when I need them. I'm not really aware of the eraser until I need it. And then I just grab it and use it, and it's at the ready for me, and then it disappears from my sight again. I just sort of live out of that network of powers that are realized through those individual things. And similarly, the space itself is kind of equipmental. The space itself is the places it offers up that are relevant to my task, right? A resting place for the paper, a traversing place for getting more paper, the resting place of my body on the couch. But all of these things exist as a kind of total meaningful network where they're all integrated with each other in meaningful ways, and I'm integrated with that. And the meaning that puts them all together is really the practice that I'm involved in. It's only when we precisely stop doing stuff, it's when we precisely stop having a living interaction with things and instead stare at them, that suddenly they appear to us as discrete individual things in some specifiable position in a kind of meaningless, empty space. But that way of talking about them, we often take to be the objective or true way of describing them. What you should notice is that's not getting at what things or space are like in themselves. You're really just describing how things appear to a particular experience, namely, how those appear to someone who is standing back and staring. That thing we often treat as neutrality, getting the world as it is in itself, is really just a description of what it's like when you disengage from things and stare at them. And notice that when you do that, those things precisely become disengaged. They become sort of alien and separate. It's like they have no connection to you and you have no connection to them. And when you sit back and stare at them, you can then think, oh, what would happen if I did this to it? What would happen if I did that to it, right? When you've lost your living connection to things and you precisely treat it as just an object, right? Something that's something you stare at, well, then you don't mind if you just poke at it and explore at it and see what happens. Can I break it? Can I do this? Can I do that? You've treated it as a kind of meaningless alien thing that is now just subject to your interventions. Well, the thing you should notice is that that attitude is really the attitude that underlies our scientific practices. Our scientific practices act as if, in studying the world, they're studying how things are in themselves. But really, what they're doing is studying what you can see about the world and what you can do to it if you separate yourself from meaningful engagement with it, stare at it, and then see, how can I do things to you? That certainly gets results, gets very powerful results. But it's a mistake to assume that that is just getting at the truth of things. There are lots of things you can objectify and you can do things to them. Doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. Doesn't mean you're getting their essence. But yeah, you can do it. Well, that, Heidegger says, is actually the technological worldview that we currently live in. We live in a society and we generally live with the view that objectifying attitude to the world that treats things as if they're just resources for us to exploit is the simple truth about things. But Heidegger's point is that's really how things look to that kind of disengaged perspective. But the fact is, we can't be truly disengaged, right? It's only because we're meaningfully, livingly connected with things in that very different way I spoke about first that we can even have that detached attitude. So that technological, scientific, objectifying staring, the objectifying gaze, is actually a derivative attitude that can only exist because it's based on something more fundamental, which is a living connection with the world in which the world precisely does not have that detached, isolated, objective form. So the technological attitude, rather than revealing the truth about things, is in a fundamental way actually hiding the truth about things. It actually conceals the truth about our relationship with the world, and indeed, it actually works against us. So in living with that kind of technological attitude, we're actually living out of a view that contradicts the very reality of what it is for us to live in the world. And Heidegger's point is that it's important to see the non-neutrality of that technological stance. It's important to see what it's concealing, and it's important to learn to cultivate instead a recognition of the way that our inhabitation of the world is what's primary.